Jerusalem, and he raised his hand. And I'm assuming that, I don't know which hand, it doesn't specify, but he raised his hand and he proclaimed judgment upon Jerusalem. And then we're told that after that, Jesus prays all night. Also, one point I want to bring in here, that men were singing hosannas, but after Jesus cleansed the temple, the children were singing hosannas. So Monday morning, Jesus basically goes into the temple. But prior to the temple, he goes through and he sees the fig. Now, Sister White points out that this is an acted parable. And this was something very strange for the disciples to witness, because they have never seen Jesus curse anything and actually immediately happening. This is found on page 582 of Desire of Ages. Most of this information is found in Desire of Ages. You probably could follow me. If you were to go home, you probably could follow my thoughts on this. Now,
that was the fig tree?
This was the fig tree, yeah. The fig tree that basically was withered because no fruits was found on him except just leaves. Now, there are certain events that happened between Monday through Thursday that I wasn't sure how to place them, and I didn't really have time. But there's a lot of things that happened between these things in here. First of all, we're told that 3 years prior to this event, the Jews, the leaders, had asked for a sign. And the Lord gave them the sign of Jonah. But now, 3 years later, the priest asked for his authority. So we're kind of seeing the Lord demonstrating the end with the beginning. What you see at the beginning, you're going to see at the end. And not just that, but at the same time, basically, they're questioning about who should they honor first with money. It's on page 602. I don't really have that much time, but I just want to kind of give you an idea, because this all has to do with the Romans. Because the Lord pointed out to the coin, what he was saying basically says you're under Roman power. They're the one who are supposed to protect you, and because they're protecting you, you are to give them their part of their money. It says right here, holding in his hand the Roman coin upon which were stamped the name and image of Caesar, he declared that since they were living under the protection of the Roman power, they should render to that power the support it claimed, so long as it did not conflict with the higher duty. So again, we see them that basically they were under the rulership of the Roman power, the fourth power in Daniel 2 that we see in the image. So I'm just going to kind of skip. I had no time to bring all the events. But on Thursday, which is the day before Passover, we're told that this was Jesus' last day in the temple, teaching in the temple. This is where basically he puts the woes on the scribes and Pharisees, and he lifts up his hand as a judge and he pronounces the judgment. Again, we recognize when Jesus pronounces judgment, he's lifting up his hand. We also see that basically they're completely passed over, but they have been passed over for a long time. Judas again renews his contract with the priest. Now, again, what I was telling you earlier, that what I was wanting to demonstrate with this is that in the line of Jesus, or in the history of Jesus, at one line we can demonstrate that Jesus is the priest, disciples are the Levites, and the Greeks represent the Nethinims, or the 11th hour worker. We have been battling with the parable of the wheat and tares. Now, at this level, if Jesus is the priest, we're told that Jesus told the disciples, the Levites, a year prior that there was a devil among them. Did the disciples recognize that?
That's a prophecy. That's a prediction. Right?
Jesus told them there was a devil among them, that not all of them were his disciples. Is that a prophecy?
Yeah, it's prediction.
But he was,
In a sense.
yeah, it was a prediction, but nonetheless, he was still letting them know there was one of them, but was that it was none among the 12. That should not be a disciple, basically. The Lord had given him every chance to become one, but he never did. So what I'm saying is that the priests know there's a devil among them. They know there's tares among them, but the Levites recognize it? No. Now, I don't know if I'm right with my assumption or not, but this is what I'm seeing at this level on this line. Now again, when they're having the Lord's Supper, Judas is basically exposed as being that devil, correct? And then after Judas is exposed, what does he do? Does he repent? He flees. So we see there's a separation taking place right at the Lord's Supper. Then we have the Garden of Gethsemane. At the Garden of Gethsemane, we also see another separation. When the Lord gets there, he separates them into 8 and 3. He leaves 8 far behind, and he takes 3 with him, and then he moves on further, and that's when you have these 3 prayers. One thing that I forgot to point out too is the Lord, Sister White tells us that out of all the 12 disciples, only 11 of them had repented. When do you repent? When there's still sin in your life, right? Okay. So what I would try to demonstrate with that is that basically disciples representing the Levites, they're still not clean by the time they get to the Garden of Gethsemane. They had to repent during the Lord's Supper. The Lord brought them to a point that all of them still had to repent. And 11 of them repent, but one of them flees and basically gives himself completely to the devil. Now, we know that after the 3rd prayer, Jesus is basically revived by Gabriel so he can pursue his course. And then Judas comes and he's betrayed into the hands of the priests and the Romans. And then we are told that he's going through his 7 trials. Now, I don't have it here on the board. I did have it in here that I can tell you a little bit about the trial. Sister White tells us that there were 2 trials with the, I wrote it down in here. 2 trials with the priests, 2 trials with the Sanhedrin, 2 trials with Pilate, and 1 with Herod. And what I'm going to try to tell you or demonstrate in whatever time I have is that basically in the trials with the Sanhedrin, where basically the high priest tears off his garment, Sister White tells us that by him doing that, he was basically lifting up men's law above God's law. Now, we're told in the Bible that a priest was never to tear down his garment, correct? And by them lifting up a men's law and tearing down a God's law, what kind of type of law is that? Type of Sunday law, correct? So we can basically see that we have a Sunday law already happening in the trials of Jesus. So after the 7th trial, then we have the crucifixion. But during this time of the trials, we know that Peter denies the Lord 3 times. Now, who did we say Peter represents? The Levites. So we see as Peter representing Levi, what did Peter do after he denied the Lord 3 times? He goes back to the Garden of Gethsemane, the very, very spot that Jesus had prayed, and he admits his sin and asks for forgiveness. So he repents. So we see a Levite already gathered in before, actually, even, like I said, everything kind of happens on the 6th day at the higher level, in Jesus' time. So then we have the crucifixion. We're told that basically Jesus carried Barabbas' cross. 3 times he fell under it, and finally they chosen Simon, and Simon carried the cross for Jesus to the spot where he was going to be crucified. At 9 a.m. he's crucified. Above is placed in Hebrew, Latin, and Greek. 3 hours goes by, and at noon there's darkness. The Father comes down, we're told, and basically lays at the foot of the cross. And then at 3 p.m. or the 6th hour, did I get that right?
That's right.
Basically, Jesus dies. The darkness lifts. The temple, the evening sacrifices begins, and we know that the curtain rips in half. But one other point that Sister White points out is that during this period of 6 hours, Simon recognizes Jesus as the Messiah. The thief recognizes Jesus as the Messiah, and the centurion recognizes Jesus as the Messiah. So we have 3 distinction kind of people recognizing, basically it's kind of gathering the harvest right before he's put away. Now, we know that Jesus, while he was on the cross during the 6 hours, he spoke 7 times, correct? You know that. And right here, after he's taken down, we have 3 men that basically prepare him for his burial, and then Jesus is put in the tomb, and then we have a shut door, correct? And then we know that the 11 disciples that repent, what do? We find out later on, what do? They go back into the upper room, and what do? They shut the door because they're scared. So I'm saying that in this history, we can see 2 shut doors, one for the priests and then one for the Levites. But I forgot to point out to you that here on Thursday, Greek come and seek Jesus. And this was a sign for Jesus that his hour has come. And we're told that Jesus began to drink the cup in anticipation. So we're already seeing that at this point, Jesus is already under a heavy burden because of the sin of the world. Now, I have no more room in here to kind of show you what I was trying to demonstrate. But then we also know that Jesus rests 24 hours, actually, because Jesus was taken off at 3 o'clock, buried. So from 3 o'clock, we need to have 4 portions of 6 hours. And I suggest to you that at 3 o'clock in the morning, Sunday morning, Jesus is resurrected. That's just my assumption. I have no proving that, but just because of the breakup that we did of the days in here, it would make sense to me by 3 o'clock, Jesus would be brought back, because the Lord demonstrated the end with the beginning. If he died at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, most likely he's going to wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning. And so we also see him that when he died, there was an earthquake. When he resurrected, there was an earthquake. But also there was the people that were resurrected with him. We are told that they all had died giving their life for Jesus, so they were all martyrs. And these basically are the first fruit that are lifted up as an ensign also, or as a wave offering. And this kind of falls on the 16th day with the Passover, with the Feast of the Passover. Now, I'm basically out of time, but this is, like I said, this is just kind of an outline of what I was trying to do. I didn't really have time to perfect everything or even to gather my notes together, but I've been looking into this for quite a while. And this is to kind of tell those that wanted it to say like, oh, we have a little bit more time. Really, by the 6th day of the week, we should have everything in order. And on the 6th day, the Lord's going to give us a double portion that is going to carry us through the Sabbath, because the Sabbath is the day of the Lord and is supposed to be a resting day. And you think about Jericho, even though it was the 7th day that they did the battle, but who did the battle for the people? Was it the people or the Lord? The Lord did the battle, and they were resting in the Lord, doing what he had required them to do. So my whole premises for looking into this was because of this foolishness that right now we're having among us, that yet we can still push a little further down, but really there isn't. And if you if you look even closer than what I'm saying, what I'm showing you, the Lord has already pretty much had done his work. We're told that in this period, John 17, the prayer, John 17 is in here, and Jesus is telling his Father, I have finished my work. So the work had already been done way before even he got into his trial on the 6th day of going through all that trials. So all I'm saying to us, to me, we have to be ready now. We have to investigate ourselves. We have to make sure we are right with the Lord, right with each other. Put away any type of sin, any type of filthiness for our life. Separate ourselves, because we're told that we cannot come in contact with someone evil and not be affected. You will be affected. You may not recognize it, but you will be affected. So this was my burden upon my heart, and I'm hoping that maybe in the future I can go upon it and break it down, because there's no way I can show everything at once. There's so much in there.
What is the 6, 6, 6, 6 on each one?
Well, I put it right here. If you would take one day equals 24 hours. The Lord tells us that there's only 12 hours during the day that you can work. So if you divide 12 by 2, you get 12. But if you divide 24 by 2, you get 12. If you divide 24 by 6, you get 4 portions of 6. And what I was trying to show is that the first day began with the night. And in the night, you have 6 hours in the darkness. So let's say, so from the time that sundown goes down till midnight, let's say if sun goes down at 6 p.m., okay? Goes down, then you have 12 midnight, and then from 12 midnight, 6 a.m. So I just kind of broke it down in 4 portions to kind of show that everything, even in the Passover, in the 6th day for manna, you had to gather during the day, not at nighttime. That's when the manna fell in the morning. So you had to be ready, go pick it up, get it ready, prepared, so you can enter the Sabbath. That way you would have your portion for the 7th day. Thank you.